Support for 100 Watts in a Wire is provided by Bioenno Power. If you're looking for a power solution, check out Bioenno Power, offering the best lithium phosphate batteries for your ham radios. Visit bioennopower.com. That's BIOENNOPOW.com. LDG Electronics provides state-of-the-art antenna tuners for every amateur need. An LDG desktop tuner works automatically with nearly any station and up to 1,000 watts. LDG power tuners are ideal for portable and mobile use as they consume almost no current and can be powered by internal batteries that last up to a year. LDG tuners are backed by our 2-year, fully transferable warranty and our legendary customer service, the best in the industry. Visit us on the web at ldgelectronics.com.
And now, from Grid Square Echo Mike 48, this is 100 Watts and a Wire.
Well, hello and welcome to 100 Watts and a Wire. I'm Christian. My call sign is Kilo Zero Sierra Tango Hotel. And on this episode, we're doing a 30-day review. This time, the 40-meter Isotron antenna. You're saying, boy, you really got a thing for these Isotrons, Christian. First the 20-meter, now the 40-meter. I had to try it. It's an interesting looking antenna. And when I said I had to try it, 30-day review is a peer review system. These are your peers here. They have a 100-watt ID, and they registered to be a reviewer. So here's how it all works. Go to 100wattsandawire.com, click the 100-watt ID tab, fill it out, simple information. You're sequentially issued a 100-watt ID. Then you go over to the 30-day tab and say, look, I'm interested in being a reviewer. Your name goes into a big pool, and it's a lottery. So what happens is I just pick names, and if you respond back to me, I put you in with the product. You get it for 30 days. You come back on the show. We talk about it, give the best review we can for the people of our community. It's basically a resource for you. It's your money. I don't want to tell you how to spend your money. These guys who are here with me today will tell us about the 40-meter Isotron. Is it worth your money? So this is how you can get involved if you're interested in the 30-day peer review system. It's not me. It's members of our community. Okay? And so what happens, the show will buy it and send it out, and then 30 days go by, we talk about it, and you can keep it. Simple as that. Okay? The only payment we get is as a community, we get to talk about the different criteria. There's about 7 of them, especially with an antenna. And we'll go through them tonight with our friends and community members. Colin is here, Kilo India 5, Juliet, KI5, JVO. Dale is here, AB4, DK, and Dan, November 4, Mike, India. We'll start with Colin. And we'll bring him in. But let's start this 30-day review with the packaging. Very simple here. It either, passes or fails or whatever. It came, you're like, hey, what's going on? Kilo India 5, Juliet Victor Oscar. Hello, Colin. Let's talk a little bit about the packaging and what you thought when this antenna arrived on your doorstep.
Yeah, good evening, Christian. Glad to be on here. Appreciate you doing the 30-day review thing. Awesome. Packaging showed up on my front doorstep in a nice, brand new looking box. No dents, no nothing. Showed up perfect. I had no complaints on how they had it boxed up at all.
I ask this because we know as ham radio operators, when we buy things, we get very particular with our money. And this antenna here is about $160 antenna. Would we have bought it on our own? I don't know, but that's why we're here. We're here to talk about, would you do that? And when I get things on my doorstep, I look at them and I go, oh no, man, I don't know about this box. I don't know if this was double boxed, but it came to you and you felt okay about it.
Yes, very confident in the way it was packaged and sent to me.
Beautiful. All right, let's move over to Dale. Alpha Bravo 4 Delta Kilo. Dale, you've been a ham for a good long time, and I'm just guessing that by the beard length, you've got a nice, long, robust beard. Tell me about the packaging. Did it meet your needs and your criteria?
The package arrived in perfect shape, Christian, and we do appreciate you doing the 30-day review program. It's a pleasure to get to participate. But the packaging was overall very good. It even down to the details internally. It had special glue blocks glued to hold the aluminum panels in place so they wasn't slipping around, sliding around. So components were wrapped good and protected. Very good package, and arrived in good shape.
That makes you feel comfortable inside, and hearing that matters to me. That's why it makes the criteria. Dan is here, November 4, Mike, India. Let's talk a little bit about the packaging. As far as you're concerned, how did it arrive? Did it sound like it came the same way as the fellas?
Yeah, I'll echo, their comments on that. It was very sturdily packed. Everything was wrapped in there with good wrapping paper. I would say that they must have used Gorilla Glue to seal that box closed, because it did take me a little effort to get it open.
Now, tell me this. If you'd have spent that money, $160 for that antenna, that's okay for you. It would have arrived. And I hear some of the guys will say, listen, I plan on putting this thing up outside. It's going to get beaten up by the weather. Packaging isn't that important to me. To me, it is. But it sounds like it met the grade for you.
Yeah, definitely it did. And I'm with you. I mean, even though I might be putting it up outside, I would like it to start in pristine condition at least.
Right. All right, the 30-day review of the 40-meter Isotron antenna, moving into the manual. Now, this is always an interesting one. Some hams are like, manual? I don't know about having a manual. Who needs a manual? And then there's some very highly technical people who look at the manual and go, I don't know, man. You could have done a lot better than that. I'm on the not so technical, but I need that instruction for me. Let's see what the fellas think. Colin, KI5, Juliet, Victor, Oscar. What do you think?
The manual, it was laid out pretty basic. I'm curious to hear from the other guys what they thought about it. It got straight to the point on laying everything out. I think they could have worded a few things a little bit better. But between hey, there you go. Yeah, pictures of it. Between the pictures there and looking at pictures of it online, I had no troubles putting it together. Like I said, there was just a few things here and there. I was going to try to look back over it and remember what they were, but I'll look at it here in a minute and try to remember.
Yeah,
but overall, it was pretty good.
Dale, AB4 DK. We've got a couple of images we can share with the friends on YouTube. This thing came to your box, you opened it up, you looked around, you pulled out the manual. Are you a manual type of guy where that's very important to you, or was it intuitive? How did you approach putting this antenna and taking it out of the box?
The manual was a pretty good product. It although it was you could tell it was a copy or reproduced item. But it overall contained all the things that you needed to make it complete. All the needed information was there. And, of course, again, the packaging was great. But it had the details even down to making the adjustments and the fine-tuning set up before. So I would rate the manual at least about a 5.7. It could have been packaged maybe a little more professionally, but good package.
I think I remember from the 20-meter Isotron that the guys were talking about, it looked a little dated, I believe that they said. Did you go back and look at it on the website? I think they may provide it there as well, but did you check into that?
I did. I also pulled up the site and looked at the manual there and printed my own copy, which was more cleaner. You could tell it had been reproduced over and over and over on the copy machine. But it contained the information we need, the instructions, the how-tos. It was pretty intuitive. There was a couple little areas where you had to really double check, make sure you had the bolts in the right place and things of that nature. But overall, pretty good.
Now, Dan, I'm a little bit extra. I think that's what the kids would say for me. I'm a little extra. I like to have the physical manual and I like to have it online. I do wear glasses out in the field. I got to take them off or putting them back on. So the manual for me is an important thing to have it in a couple of locations, and I like to have it in hand. What did you make of the 40-meter Isotron and its manual?
Okay, so well, the paper manual that came with it, what was described before is pretty accurate. Let's call it retro. That's what it kind of reminded me of, an old school manual that came of that type. But when I opened the box and saw all the pieces in there, I kind of realized that I probably wouldn't want to try to put this antenna together just guessing where the parts go. So the manual and the diagrams in there were good. They helped do that. There were a couple of places where you needed to read the manual kind of closely. Construction or installing it went pretty well. I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I found, kind of going back afterwards, reading the section on how to find the resonant point in the antenna and the tuning, you had to pay a little bit close attention to that. And also kind of after the fact, I probably didn't review it as closely as I should have. It's a little bit picky about where it's installed. So you do want to check those parts out, because I had to do a couple of redos because of that.
And when you open the box up, did it, and all hams are different in their experience levels. Did it look like did it look a little intimidating when you opened? To me, it looks a little bit like a large egg beater, if I'm being honest, visually how this looks. And the curb appeal section, I'm interested to see what you guys make of that. When you put it up there, did it look a little intimidating at all? Or was it something that you were like, I can kind of see how this goes?
Well, I looked at the picture of it first and could kind of visualize it, but there's enough bolts and funny looking parts in there that you want to make sure that you know where everything goes. And I don't think I had to do a reassemble. It was more with how I had it mounted, where I had to do a redo. But yeah, it is a funny looking beast. It looks like a science experiment.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I look at that antenna and I see, $160, and I look at it and it really does look sort of like a fancy, large egg beater to me. And it doesn't look like it has so many parts, but then again, I've never held it, and these didn't come through me to the guys. They went directly to them. So it's always interesting to see if the manual was representative of what was in that box and if that was very helpful. Moving our 30-day review into a new section, and one I know people enjoy, and it's the install. How did these guys install it? Was it easy? Let's take a look at that, and we'll move over with Colin. Colin, KI5 JVO. Let's talk about your install.
Yeah, my install went great. I just took down my 2-meter base antenna off my 30-foot push-up pole. So I drug it down, put it right up there on the pole that I had it on, used the same coax, and got it setting up at about 25 feet. I didn't go the full 30 feet up. So that's my setup, just right off the back of the house on about 25 feet up on a push-up pole.
Okay, 25 feet. What did they suggest to you in the manual that you get it? The higher the better? Is that kind of the idea?
I never saw, unless I didn't read the manual thoroughly enough to catch that part. I looked for it, but like I said, maybe I missed it. I don't know. I didn't ever see a spot.
I could be with you on this, though. It was sort of like you had to take an antenna down and to put another one up, and you're kind of putting it up in the conditions that you can. Okay, so yeah. I totally get that, and we'll talk about performance here in just a little bit.
I almost wanted to jump ahead.
You're trying to slip it in on there. I see you. You're sneaky. Hang in there, Colin. We'll get to it. I know people get really excited about hearing that stuff too. Dale, tell me tell me a little bit about your install, and for our folks again on YouTube, we have a couple of images that we can share with those as well. Tell me what you found, Dale.
Well, my install was a little bit different than stationary. I'm a big parks on the air guy, portable operations. And when I first saw this antenna, I thought this is going to be perfect. It's small enough to set up portable. So I've got a military mast pole type assembly on a bumper hitch mount on my van. And I mounted mine about 15 foot off the ground, and coax in, set up to the old Icom 7100 portable, and started activating some parts. So the performance on it was great, but we'll get into that, as you say, a little later on. One thing I'll say on the assembly part, it was lacking some lock washers that needed to be included with that assembly to help maintain it and hold its tightness. Was the first time I assembled it, I traveled with it, and it was already loosened up by the time I got to my site. And so we had to do some adjustment, retighten everything up, and check it out from that point. But my install was a little different. It's a portable type installation, and works great for 40 meters.
I heard you're a member of our Discord group, and you were posting you were out there doing it. And I heard you one time, as the guys would say, gangbusters coming in. But look, I'm jumping the gun now. I got to stop. We can't go. You got to tune in and listen now. You listen as we go. We're going to talk about the performance there. Height above ground. It looks like you've kept that at a reasonable, like Colin, how high were you? About 20, 25 feet?
I was 15 foot off the ground.
15?
Set up.
Wow.
Yeah. 3 military sections. They're about 4 foot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm about 2 foot off the ground above the hitch mount on the bumper. Very clean. And I did have to change out the U-bolts. The U-bolt assembly would not attach to an 1 and 3/4 inch military mast pole. Mm-hmm. So I just got some larger U-bolts, drilled out the hole, and put the bigger one in and mounted it right up. It's really slick. Goes together good, up easy. I can pull up to a site, depart, and be set up and ready to operate in 5 minutes.
Okay. So with your assembly and your install, you had to do a little improvisation, and maybe in the pros and cons a little bit later on in this review, we'll talk about things maybe we can improve. All right. Sure. Thank you. So height above ground there, you got 15 feet, you got a push-up mast, that sort of thing. It's pretty low profile at this point, and we'll get into performance in just a little bit. Dan, November 4, Mike, India. Let's talk about your install a little bit. What'd you do?
Okay, well, it took me about an hour probably to put the whole thing together following the instructions. I don't remember about the lock washers. That might have been an issue for me. I had a few pieces left over, and that always worries me. Like, what did I miss within there? But it went together. Once I tightened it up, it was sturdy. I have it on a 28-foot heavy-duty fiberglass telescoping mast. Now, I did notice somewhere in the manual that it very much recommended mounting it on a metal mast, and I don't know if that might have affected some of the issues that I had later. But I'll wait till the testing part to talk about that. But I had about 100 feet of RG213 going from that coming into the shack. And then because it was on that mast, I had to use a ladder to mount the antenna, and then also to do all of the adjustments during the testing. I'll tell you, I had a good bit of exercise going up and down the ladder. I don't want to jump ahead to the testing, but
yes, you do. We all do. We all want to get there. We all want to hear how she did. But about how high did you say?
The mast is about 28 feet. If you extend it fully, I would say I probably had it about 25.
We put an image in this. We're also recording video along with the audio podcast, so you will be able to go to the 100 Watts in a Wire YouTube channel to see some of the images of this particular antenna. And it does look a bit higher there. And I'd have to say, if this was my antenna, I'd be doing a similar setup as you are doing there, Dan. And it looks like you got it up there to highest. So yes, I'm really curious to see how it went for you there as we get into the other things, the bench test. Speaking of the bench test, for our 30 days, 100 watts in a wire, 30-day peer review of the 40-meter Isotron antenna, a little bit different visually than the 20-meter we did a couple of months back. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, the bench test. Let's find out how she did on the bench. When you put it together and you're looking at the SWR and doing the A/B test. Ooh, that's a little loud. Coming through. Colin, Kilo India 5, Juliet Victor, Oscar. Let's talk about when you put it on the bench test and looked at some of the SWR. What'd you see?
Christian, when I first put it on my MFJ antenna analyzer without the little adjustment doohickey thing, whatever they called it, SWR was reasonable, but I found later after I went back to the manual and added the adjustment piece to it that I was able to get the best I could get it. Like Dave, or I can't remember, guy previous here said, I had a few trips up and down the ladder trying to get it fine tuned, right in the middle of the phone band. And overall, I think I got it to a 1.7 was as low as I could get it where I wanted it.
And that's not bad. That's not bad.
No,
I mean, anything 2 to 1 and under for me, it will work okay, especially at that height. That's pretty cool. But I could see you doing the, what's the process to tune this antenna? You mentioned going up and down the steps and the ladder, and so did Dan. What do you have to do? Right. You got to pull something out? What's happening there? Remember, it looks like a bit of an egg beater.
Right. If you pull up a picture there of the antenna, you'll see a little metal rod sticking off to one side. You can't really see it in that picture. One of the other guys' pictures they shared with you had a pretty good, you could see it real well. Basically, all you had to do was tilt it up or down, whichever way, I can't remember, to get your frequency. Well, I see the pieces laying over there to the right.
Yeah, this is before the build. Anyway, so you've got a piece that you need to kind of negotiate to get the SWR.
Yeah, you go like I said, whichever way it was, up or down to get it higher or lower. And then if you needed to, you could add the little square metal plate on the end of it. Yeah, you can kind of see it up there to the left. There, there it is. There it is. You see it hanging over there. See, he had to add the little square piece of metal to get it lower. I didn't have to add that. That's not the direction I needed to go to get mine resonant where I was wanting it. So, but yeah, it wasn't bad, but I just noticed when I move it very far one way, it went crazy and jumped. And then so I went to trying to fine tune it little by little. And it wasn't. After about the 7th time up the ladder, I said 1.7 is good for me.
Yeah, that works for me anyway. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Dale, you had this thing out in the field there. Did it make you a little crazy tuning it, or did you hit the sweet spot?
Not too bad. Of course, I played with it a little bit before I actually went out into the field. But setting up in the field at my house, I fired up the old Rig Expert Stick Pro analyzer and tapped it on. First out of the box, we were about 2.0 to 1. And the tuning stub is what I call it. It is adjustable. And the instruction manual said you can turn it up to the top, kind of, and it makes it more resonant on the higher parts of the band, or turning it down low, pointing down, was for the middle lower parts of the band. So I ended up at about 1.6 to 1 at 7.200. I wanted to try to get in the middle of the 40-meter band. And oddly enough, I ran a sweep with the analyzer through the bands. And remarkably, it was actually resonant on a couple of other spots really well. So it ended up being resonant at 446.000 at 1.08 to 1. And also at 53.275 at 1.06 to 1. So I could use it on 6 meter or 440 as well. It was remarkable, and surprised that it even it leveled out on those 2 additional bands. So
okay, very good, Dan. Let's talk about your bench test there. Tell us what you saw when you hooked it up.
Okay, well, I used a Comet antenna analyzer to tune it, and I was aiming to get it the low end of 40 meters, mostly for CW and digital. I initially had kind of a difficult time. I didn't put the little tuning arm on there initially, and you can see in that picture where I had I guess, an onion on there with some ferrites, and that I ended up taking that off because it didn't seem to help anything, and in fact seemed to hurt it. One of the things in the manual it said was that these prefer to be on a metal mast, and mine was on a fiberglass mast. I don't know if that affected it, but I do believe it was affected by that chain link fence right below it, which goes around about 3/4 of an acre. So when I had it lowered on the mast, I have a feeling that was doing initially. My first shot after I got it up there, it was a little bit over 3, and I knew I didn't want to do that. Since I didn't have it on a metal mast, I tried adding a counterpoise to it just to see, if that would help out a little bit, because it mentioned in the manual attaching the ground to the metal mast, which I guess would have been the counterpoise on a metal mast. But I did that, put the tuning arm on there, and lowered it down there, and I was able to get it down to about 1.6 when I pushed the antenna up. When I got it up to full height, it came down to 1.6, which leads me to believe that fence probably was creating some issues there. But 1.6, I'll live with that. Sure. And I had it on a LDG tuner, so that was going to clean it up just fine.
All right. Very good. All right. The 30-day review even. I'm fine. I haven't been drinking. Come on now. It's too early in the week here. The 30-day peer review system continues now of the 40-meter Isotron antenna. We've talked about the packaging, the manual, the install, and the bench test, and some good SWR readings. That's cool to see here with this very odd-looking antenna. But now, the true test of the 40-meter Isotron antenna may be the performance. And we're going to go over and find out how it did. Colin's here. Kilo India 5, Juliet Victor Oscar. Colin, let's talk about the performance a little bit. What'd you find out?
Yeah, the performance. Well, when I first put it up, I was actually kind of disappointed. I didn't even try to work anybody. I've got 2 other antennas I was comparing it to, so I was able to flip between all 3. I was comparing it to my Hustler 4-band trap vertical and my 80-meter Delta loop. And the noise level, when I first put it up, was easily 3, even sometimes 6 dB louder. I mean, it was just picking up so much static and extra noise. But then I don't know if there was something weird going on in the atmosphere those few days. I don't know. But ever since, it was just those first few days, and now it may be a couple dB louder on receive, the noise. But overall, it's really surprised me, Christian, the performance on this thing. Now, granted, my 80-meter Delta loop, I would hope would beat it. But surprisingly, I was able to make contact to Florida and California during the North American QSO party, and I was loud. I could hear them louder and transmit louder to them, better signal report on the Isotron as opposed to my other 2 antennas.
Wow.
I don't know, I guess the lobes coming off of it were perfect for Florida, and I'm in Oklahoma, if anybody was wondering. So I'm right in the middle here. And overall, it performed. It completely shocked me, the performance on this antenna. I couldn't believe it. Like I said, it's not. I'm not going to say I'm going to go take down my vertical or my Delta loop and stick to the Isotron, because they're definitely better in most case scenarios. But I was able to make contacts all the way up north and even down into South America. So it performed.
And I think that's important to hear, that this antenna performed the way it did, because HOAs, this could be a pretty good HOA antenna.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. I'm going to hold on to it, and if I ever run into a buddy that's in a HOA and can't put anything up, surely he can surely somebody can disguise this or tell them it's yard art. I don't know what you could use your imagination with it. Like you said, it looks like a giant egg beater. It's funky looking, but yeah, I think a man in an HOA would, if that's all he could put up, hey, it works. It works great.
I think hearing that you are in the middle and you went from kind of coast to coast, that's pretty cool, man.
Coast to coast and all the way up north. So it's getting out and works great.
Well, thank you for that, Colin. That's an important piece right there. Dale, I know you're out there. You were running around, and the members of our community that are in the Discord kind of could feel what you were up to. You were out there and you were pushing it out in a portable situation, and you had some pileups. It was a little crazy, I have to say, and you were loud. There was a particular afternoon you were out there. Now, I don't know anything about this antenna, but I can tell you this man was out there in a park, and he can tell you where he was. I don't know where he was, but you were loud. Let's talk about your opinions of taking this out in a portable situation.
Well, I'm a sold user on this antenna for portable ops, parks on the air events, field day even. It would make a good dedicated 40-meter antenna for field day. I was able to activate 3 parks. My first park was the Cumberland Gap National Park. This picture that just popped up is on the Tennessee side of the park. The Cumberland Gap National Park covers both Tennessee and Kentucky. And first time around, I went to a new part of the park in Kentucky, which I'd never been to before, so I didn't have anything to compare it to. But, man, we had a pileup going on there. I was about 1,400 foot at that location, and had several drive-bys looking around at the old egg beater, what is this the guy doing and whatnot. But the wife was with me, sitting on the passenger side, and we just had a blast making contacts. Actually, we activated the Tennessee side, and then later on in the afternoon we ate lunch and then activated the Tennessee side as well as the Kentucky. I was probably a couple of miles from Virginia state line. But we, altogether, those 2 days, we managed about 145, 50 contacts. And then I came back and activated my home park here in Morristown, Tennessee, Panther Creek Park. And we ended up altogether a little over 200 contacts. And just pileups were amazing. I had folks waiting on me. I couldn't get to all of them. It was just it was a blast. So I can see this antenna being a great performer for MCOM setup, and it didn't seem to me that the height made that big a difference. Like I said, I was only about 15 foot high, and elevation wise, I was no higher than 1,600 foot at either location. So, but it's pretty awesome.
So for you, you had a lot of volume. You were bringing a lot of stuff in. When you got back, or maybe in the moment, was there any contacts that surprised you?
Yeah, I was able to make Iowa, Nebraska, and even made a contact in Washington State on 40 meters.
Wow.
I went back and looked at, I did a map out of all my contacts, kind of similar to the Whisper map, whoever can hear you. But I was surprised. I made 2 contacts in California, and we're from the Appalachians on the eastern coast of the United States, and it was pretty good performance. It's going to be my go-to 40-meter activation antenna.
Wow. Okay, so once it's put together, easy enough to deploy.
Pops right up. I leave it assembled to one of the 4-foot sections. I just set the other 2 sections up and lift it up, set it in the holder, and we're in business. It's really, really quick and easy. And I've got it marked on the adjustment, so if I get to banging up the tuning rod or something, the stub, I know where it's supposed to be, the directionality of it and whatnot. But it's pretty nice. It performed. I was totally really surprised and thankful that it did perform really well, because we had Jason, the old guy that my friend started that POTA. He said he heard me. I didn't get to make his contact, but we had some POTA friends all around the eastern, western United States, and they all gave me a shout out to my friend up in Maryland, Robert. he's listened in for me. I made 3 or 4 contacts with him, and he said I was as loud as ever. And I normally use a 100 watts and a wire, pretty much antenna, inverted L. But this 100 watts and the egg beater did real well.
100 watts and an egg beater. I like that one. Let's move over to Dan. Let's see if he had the same thing. You're hearing that it could do okay maybe in an HOA. It definitely did okay portable. He's out there free of trees, power lines, and metal fences. What do you think out there, Dan, in terms of performance?
Well, I'm not in an HOA, but I am in a neighborhood, and I do have someone in the house who cares what things look like outside. But on the performance of it, so I tested it using FT8 on phone and CW. I always used 100 watts or less into it. So I first tested it using FT8, and I was able to work pretty much all across the country on FT8. In fact, I think my first contact on FT8 might have been Washington State. And I was able to work some DX. As you can see there, it was being heard in the Caribbean and over in Europe. And I worked a few stations over there. So it worked really, really well once it was tuned down to the low end of the band. And also on phone and CW, I worked pretty much the same all the way across the country. It was a little bit less on the DX side for phone, but I did work a few DX stations there. The other thing is I used it for all the 40-meter contacts I made during winter field day because I figured I would give it a really good workout, and I did both CW and phone on that day, and I made a ton of contacts during winter field day, so it performed really well. So one thing I can say, because I was A/B testing it with an in-fed half-wave antenna that I've had out in the yard, and that antenna is kind of up high and in the clear, so I kind of expected that this might not perform quite as well. Is that surprisingly on the transmit side, being heard in other places, it was pretty comparable. Where it kind of fell short was on the receive side of it. So they say you gotta hear them before you can work them, right? So but not a lot. Just it was enough to be noticeable, and that possibly may have been impacted by me not following the recommended mounting instructions. Had I had it on a metal mast, I kind of wonder.
I think you would have been okay. I mean, I don't know. I think you did okay. It probably was your fence. I agree. I bet you it was the fence there because we have lots of fiberglass masts, and they don't seem to interfere. I got to applaud you, though, Dan. I think that, we get so wild about our field days. We have a couple of special events that we do, at least operating events with 100 watts and a wire. I think weeks leading up to it, I'm going to use this antenna. Nope, I'm going to use this one. I'm going to use this one. I'm going to use this one. I want to slam dunk. I really applaud you for going out there and committing to this antenna on field day. Of all days, where did you go in there thinking, man, this could really tank me? Or, were you just open?
No, I was pretty open to it. I mean, I'm not like a huge serious competitor on field day. I don't really go. I know a lot of other people operate. They're going to get better scores than me. I just always want to do better than I did last year, primarily. But also, during the testing before field day, I already knew this thing could reach out pretty much to every state. Like I said, my first contact was Washington State from Georgia, so I knew it could make the cut. And I think I had one contact in Japan, so I knew if the conditions were right, this would, and the conditions were good enough on winter field day to make a lot of contacts with it.
All right. Well, there you have it. There's a lot to dig into right there with that antenna. That's some interesting performance reviews from your peers of the 40-meter Isotron antenna. All right. Now here's one we all have significant, well, we may not have significant others. We have neighbors, we have friends, we have people that come to visit. We do have partners, whatever. It's time to think about that curb appeal. Let's go to Colin and see how this thing looked up in the air. You've heard us talk about a little bit like an egg beater here. Tell us what you think about how it looked. Did it pass the Colin test in terms of looks?
It passed all my all my respects in far as looks. Like I said, I think it's more like a conversation piece now. I'm surprised I haven't had anybody stop and ask me what I got up there. Of course, they've seen me put up all kinds of antennas on that push-up mast, and I've got an 80-meter delta loop strung up 270 feet of wire in the treetops, and that vertical in the backyard. I'm sure all my neighbors already know me as that crazy neighbor on the radio. So, but I have no complaints about it. Like I said, hopefully, I would think maybe in an HOA you could somehow make it pass. I would think.
I would think if you kept it below the roof line, say you're, in the back of your home, say, and not the side, and if you're in an HOA and you kept it just below the visual of the roof line, maybe you'd be all right. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. I see nothing wrong with the curb appeal. Like I said, I think it's kind of neat looking. I like it.
He mentioned lawn art. All right.
Yeah.
I'll take that. All right, Dale. Let's go over to Dale. Dale, this thing looks like a big egg beater. Did it make you hungry at least?
After working those pileups, yeah, it made me a little hungry. But I think it looks nice enough. We're antenna guys. A wire antenna is easier to hide, and I got some funny looks. Some drive-by folks. One place I set up was just in a little outlook area, looking out across the mountain and the valley, and I had a couple of drive-throughs looking at it, saying, what's this is? But it looks okay to me. It works good. It's great. I think it's a great portable antenna. Well made, assembled good, and it's. I'm really I'm thankful I got the opportunity to test it and use it. I saw them advertised years ago, 10, 15 years ago, when I was first introduced to ham radio, and but I think it's got good curb appeal.
That's what I think is important about this. I mean, I think it's cool to hear you guys take it. I probably would not have purchased this antenna on my own because I look at it and I go, I don't know about that. And it's not about the curb appeal. It's just, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's going to work. And at that price point, I don't know. But this is a chance to kind of get it out to you guys. You beat it up, run it through the processes, and it may actually open things up for other people who are like, well, I don't know, man. I heard this thing. So you would put it up at your house, though? Would you put it up at your house? Okay.
I would mount it on the side of a tower and use it for a dedicated 40 meter. I'm an old standby wire antenna guy, but I would do it. I'd mount it permanently.
Okay.
In fact, I'm going to take a look at the 20 meter version and probably buy into one of those.
Looks a little different. It looks a little different than this. When I saw this, I was like, whoa, that is different. That's something different. All right, let's go check with Dan. Dan, let's talk about the curb appeal at your place there. Is this something that you think you'd keep up? Could it, what's your opinions of this, personal and your neighborhood and your environment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I may possibly leave it up. I did take another antenna down to put it up on the mast, which is a dedicated 10-meter antenna, and I may want that up, given what's going on with band conditions right now. So I may not leave it up there. I may look for someone who lives in a HOA who might use this and loan it to them. But I'm keeping it for sure. It's compact, as you said. It could pretty easily be hidden somewhere, or you could call it yard art. If you put it out there in the open somewhere, it's very likely to draw some attention because it is different looking. But one of the things that I thought is you might be able to convince somebody that it's an over-the-air TV antenna, which I do believe you can get exemptions for in some HOAs. I don't know. I don't live in one. Or you could mount it below your weather station and say it's part of the weather station apparatus, because most people might not know the difference of it. But the looks of this thing belie its performance for sure. I'm with you. I probably would not have purchased this for myself. Just based on other, I guess, my common knowledge of antennas.
Yeah, you guys can look this up. It's isotronantennas.com and just do a search for the 40-meter Isotron antenna. You'll find it there, and you'll know what we're talking about. As you're listening to this, this is kind of the antenna that you may not pop on right away. I don't know. I think the price point, it sounds, what the performance is, it's something else. But $160, man, I'm kind of like, ooh, and I look at it and I'm like, I don't know. This is helpful hearing the guys talk about it. But you really have to think about the application and where you're hanging this in terms of curb appeal. Is this going to make the grade? Is it looking enough like a bird feeder? Interesting about a television antenna. That's something I hadn't thought about with this. So do with it what you will. I hope these are helpful for you. Now we're going to go into the part of the 30-day review. This is a peer review among our community members who took this antenna for 30 days or more and put it to the test and have come back to tell you about it. We're going to get into the pros and the cons. Each member here of this cohort is going to talk about the pros and cons, if there are any, and then we're going to give our overall rating, which is a 5.5 to a 5.9. Okay, so we'll end with a sort of a meter reading. 5.9, 5.5. 5.5 is totally passable, so nobody gets hurt here in that. Let's take a look at the pros and cons of the 40-meter Isotron, and we're going to start with Colin. Colin is here, and we'll bring him in. He's Kilo India 5 Juliet Victor Oscar. Tell us a little bit about the pros and cons of this antenna, and then give us, any suggestions to the maker. If you want to give any suggestions, this is the time to do that, plus your overall rating. What do you think, Colin?
Yeah, the pros would definitely be its size. I mean, if you think about a 40-meter dipole, how much room you're going to need to have for a 40-meter dipole. Like we've all been saying, for a man in an HOA or lady, man or lady, in an HOA, I definitely could see this being a huge pro for somebody in an HOA. Cons, the only con for me is that I have room to put up a bigger and, like I said, better antenna. I've got the Delta loop up and different things like that. I really don't see any cons to it, other than I personally don't see the reason for me to have this antenna up permanently, because I have all the other antennas for 40 meters. So I can't really see a con to it. Any recommendations for the manufacturer? I'd have to go with the other gentleman that said lock washers. I failed to mention that. He brought that to my attention. I definitely think they should add the extra 25 cents worth of, or dollars worth of lock washers. Maybe I don't know if it affects the performance or the tuning a bit. I don't know what it may affect the antenna in some way. I don't know. But lock washers would be my main thing to tell them to add to it.
In terms of a rating, you're 5.5 to a 5.9. What do you like?
I'd give it a solid, how about a 5.8? Solid 5.8.
All right, we'll take it. Thank you, Colin. We appreciate you spending that time, the 30 days with this product. And hey, the guys have said, if I got a friend who needs it, maybe that sort of thing. Right. We've saw portable operations become a thing, emergencies. So there are different applications for this for different kinds of people. Colin's got enough room there. He's got a couple other things going.
I guess I could see if my wire antenna and a windstorm come through and knock my other antennas down. Hey, I could roll the push-up pole down and throw this up on the push-up pole and be right on the air on 40 meters that easy. So I hadn't thought of that till you just said that.
Good.
That maybe it would be a good backup. I hadn't thought of that. There you go. Easy to deploy. We got a use
for Colin there. Dale, let's talk about the pros and cons of your, experience here. Any ideas for the manufacturer, and then we'll get into your rating.
Very good, Christian. I think the pros. One pro thing is it's a very small package. It lends itself to portable ops, which I'm more involved with than not. But and emergency communications in our area, we do a lot of testing and sets, and And I can tell you this is going to be utilized with that for sure. Good, good field day antenna, portable setup in the field somewhere, operation. And I feel like probably the one of the biggest cons, if any, would be the lack of lock washers. That really locks down the unit, and I don't really think it affects the tuning or setup or anything of that nature. It just makes it more rigid. And I read somewhere where this antenna, if you compared it to a halfway dipole, 40-meter dipole, this antenna has just as much surface area as that wire antenna does. So, and it's just put in a small package. That's the pros and the cons. Pretty much, I like it.
Good deal. All right, let's go over to Dan. Let's see the pros. Oh, we got to go back. We didn't get your rating. 5.5 through a 5.9. What do you think?
I'm a solid 5.8, just because of the and leaning toward the 5.9 because it did give me a lot of good pilots working out on parts of the air.
Okay, so you're 5.8, but like a 5.9 on your peaks.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's fair enough. All right, Dan, what do you think here? Let's talk about pros. Let's talk about the cons and any sort of tips for the manufacturer that they may be able to improve it a little bit.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll say the first pro is that this thing actually works. I had told somebody before this started, a member of my club, that I was doing this, and they said, "Oh, a dummy load. You're going to test out a dummy load." Well, it's not that. It's definitely not a dummy load. It definitely works. I mean, I wouldn't expect miracles out of it. I kind of go with what Dale just said. It has all electrically, it's the same as a 40-meter dipole. I did find, with my end-fed half wave out there, I think, same length of wire, but probably more capture space up in the air made it a little bit better on receive. Even before I heard, the other reviews, one of the first things I thought about this after I used it is it would be great to set up out in a field day location because it's so easy to do, or for parks on the air and for MCOM. So I think it's a really good choice for that. On the cons side of it, it only covers one band. So if you've got limited, options to put up an antenna, it might, if you can only put up one antenna and you want to work multiple bands, it's a consideration for that. The tuning for me was just a little bit finicky. Like I said, a bunch of trips up and down the thing, and I did have to tune it again after we had a winter storm because it kind of, I don't know, expanding and contracting of the metal maybe caused it, but I just lowered it, adjusted it back to the way I had it, and it seemed to be good. And then finally, like I noted, and I tested it over several times on the receive, that my wire antenna just performed noticeably better on receive, maybe not so many dB. So I don't have any really tips for the manufacturer. I think it's a good solid antenna for its use cases. And I think maybe because some of the things I noted, and maybe just because of operator error, I'll give it a 5.7.
Okay, 5.7. We got 2 5.8s. Dale said it was peaking at 5.9, but pretty much a 5.8 there. Let me ask you something about one as we add this into the pros and cons real quick, and I'll go back to the guys too. For $160, yay or nay? You've played with this. Now, I don't like spending other people's money, but knowing that that's what this antenna costs, where are you on that price point? Is it up too high?
Knowing the performance, I think I'm okay with that. With that price range. I mean, not knowing this, I wouldn't get it simply because I would be looking to probably have more band coverage than just one of the hand bands.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. And it makes me feel good that we're actually providing this as a service to others so they can know where their money is going to be spent. Dale, what do you think there, that price point there? For me, it sets me back a little bit, but I'm a little tighter maybe than most. I've got young kids in the family and like everybody else does. $160, knowing what you know today, you feel it's fair?
I first heard about it. We communicated with you about it, and I got to looking at it. And I thought it's a little pricey, maybe, but overall, with performance and reviews and use, I think I'm okay with the price tag.
Okay. Fair enough. Let me go over and ask this young fella here, Colin. Colin's a hardworking guy like the rest of us, and don't know where you are in your life, but the price tag, $160. What do you think?
Yeah, I also have a couple of little kiddos running around, so
good.
I personally, I wouldn't have spent $160 just looking at it. But as we go back, if I was sitting in an HOA and I needed an antenna and I heard that it did perform, I could easily see spending the $160. It just, for me, $160 for a single banded antenna at like 40 meters, like I said, I couldn't justify it. But I could, if I was in different circumstances, I could see spending $160 for what it would give you on 40.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. This may help somebody make the determination. That makes me feel good inside that the money that is put out for the test was actually beneficial in giving you a fair look at this antenna because, I look at it now, I can listen to the guys. They were not under any sort of obligation to put this over. This was not provided by Isotron at all. This was purchased and given to these guys to review so that whatever they said was without bias. It came right out. They didn't have to sugarcoat it for you at all. So I hope that helps. I definitely want to thank Colin, Kilo India 5, Juliet Victor Oscar, Dale, Alpha Bravo 4, Delta Kilo, and Dan, November 4, Mike India, for taking a look at the 40-meter Isotron, taking time out of their life to create a body of work, if you will, at least a criteria that will live on in the podcast. We'll put some clips up on the YouTube channel. So for people who do like to go portable, who do live in HOAs, this is a consideration for them. And you can spend your own money the way you see fit. All right, and if you're interested in being a reviewer, it's easy enough to do. You can get a 100-watt ID, just as these gentlemen have. Go to the website, 100wattsandawire.com, click the 100-watt ID tab, quick register. All your information is safe and easy. It doesn't get shared. You do become part of the mailing list, which you can opt in or opt out of if you like. But each week, I let people know what's happening. Look for our community gatherings on Saturday when we do our live streams, that sort of stuff. You're on the list. Then you go over and you can become a reviewer if you want to. Just put your name in one time, and it's a lottery. And you can do just like these fellas did tonight and hopefully provide yet another service for our great amateur radio community. All right, friends, take care of yourselves and look after each other as best you can. And by all means, if you can, please try and stay above the noise. 7-3, everybody.
To join the 100 Watts in a Wire community, visit 100wattsandawire.com.